Okay, so before I get distracted even more, let me answer this question because, like I said earlier, this is a very important question and something that I've seen so many people struggle with. And I'm going to give a big kind of caveat here. This is not going to give you a solid answer. I'm not going to say, and here's the solution, poof, done, haha, problem solved. It's kind of too open-ended for that. But what I hope I can kind of help with is giving you different ways of reframing how to think about these types of things. So let me just kind of read out the question here. So the student mentioned that now that they're in class 6, they feel like they're really happy that they're finishing the course, but they had something on the back of their mind. The anxiety of finding a job, how long it's going to take, will they even be able to find a job, and even more so, feeling that the dream of becoming a professional animator is within their grasp, but are they ever going to be able to achieve what they actually want to do? Achieve the shots that they want to do, the quality that they want to achieve in the end. So there's more to the question here, but let's kind of address these notes here first. So the anxiety of finding a job and not knowing how long it's going to take, all of that stuff is a valid anxiety. Do not ever feel bad about feeling anxiety about that stuff. It is a very valid point. We need a job and we don't know how long it's going to take. And unfortunately, I can't promise any but if you just work hard, you're going to get a job 6 months at most. No. I've known animators that get jobs a week after they graduate. I've known animators who got jobs before they even graduated. I was not one of them. I've known other animators that it took 6 months. I've known other animators where it took 2 years. There's no guarantee of how long it's going to take. But with that said, the thing that I see more often is the people who get the jobs are the people who don't stop pushing themselves. The people who get those jobs are the ones who keep improving their reel and keep working at their goal. The ones that don't get jobs are the ones that typically they graduate, they put out a reel, and then they wait. And then maybe 6 months later, they'll update the reel, maybe add one new shot, send it out, and then wait for another 6 months. That's not enough. Typically, when you're looking for a job, you want to be able to update at least 1 or 2 shots every 3 months so that you're continually updating your reel, and not only updating your reel, pushing your skills to be better. So continue learning. And these shots don't have to be huge. They don't have to be 600, 1200 frame epics. Even just a short 100 frame animation is going to be good. So you want to keep pushing your skills. Even honestly, when you have a job at a studio, this is the little thing that they don't tell you when you get a job at a studio right off the bat, is usually people think that when I get a job at a studio, now I'm going to have shots for my demo reel. Now I'm going to be able to get jobs and it's going to start rolling, no problem. No. One, you might work at a garbage studio. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but sometimes you work at a studio and the shots that you're going to work on are just nothing. The work that is on your demo reel is way better than the work you're going to be doing at the studio. That happens. Additionally, maybe you did get a job at a big studio. Great. They do amazing work. And you're going to be animating the character that's way back there in the background that's all in the motion blur. And no one's going to see it. They're just there, character number 2 way up there. Hey, I animated that person way over there. Yay! Great demo reel piece, right? No. You're going to work on shots that you might not even be able to use on your demo reel. Not only that, but you might finish your job at that studio and they're not going to release the film for another 6 months. And that shot that you animated is stuck under NDA, non-disclosure agreement, which means you cannot show that shot that you animated on for another 6 months, but you need a job now. Great. So what that means is, even when you're working at a studio, when you're first starting out, you should still be working on your own shots. It's going to be hard. Animation is hard. It's really, really hard. But again, it doesn't have to be long, super complex shots. A short, amazingly animated piece of animation is going to be way better than any long, epic animation, epic in terms of length, that is like so animated. So regardless of whether you get a job right away or not, you should still be working on your demo reel. It kind of is a never-ending thing. So kind of going back to that question, that anxiety of finding a job hunt is stressful. That knowledge of not knowing how long it'll take, or even if you're going to find a job, is amazingly stressful. I do not want to belittle that. I've gone through it. It's not fun. But as long as you keep working, as long as you keep improving, you will get that job. The biggest thing is also, don't just focus on the big studios. Don't be afraid of applying for smaller studios. That's a good way to get into the industry. Now, that kind of leads into the next part of the question. So, will I ever get to where I want and do those amazing shots like my mentor did? Well, let's kind of keep going through the question here. So the student was also saying, I feel both excited and terrified at the same time. I want to work at a great studio like DreamWorks or Sony Images one day and work on something game-changing. And they feel that they won't be able to find that sort of greatness, and that they're going to be stuck just working on minor things that have no importance. So they also kind of keep going and mention that what's the point of working, or I'll save that extra question there because that's going to dive into another thing. So let's actually address this one here first before we go too much further. So they want to work at a great studio like DreamWorks and Sony, and they want to be part of something game-changing. Let's address that first, because that's a big thing. And it's not wrong to want to work at a big studio. Definitely not. I would love to work at DreamWorks. I would love to work at Sony Images and Disney and all of these things, and work on one of these feature films that I grew up with. If I got to work on a Mario movie, I love Mario. If I got to work on a Pokemon movie, I would love that. We all want to work on something big like that. But, and this is a very big but, why did I laugh at that? Take it seriously. This is a very serious question here I'm answering. So if your only goal is to work at big studios, regardless of where they are, whether they're in the States, whether in Europe, wherever they are, if your goal is to only work at big studios, you are going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. And you can kind of think about it in this way. At one point, big studios were small studios. You never know where a studio is gonna go. For example, when CG animation just got started, the big studios were Disney and Pixar. If you wanted animation, that's who you went to. Everyone else, garbage. Disney and Pixar, that's the people you want to work for. Until this one little company that no one had heard about, DreamWorks. They don't do anything. What are they gonna do? They came in and released a film. Who cares? I want to work for Disney and DreamWorks. Disney and Pixar. And suddenly, Shrek comes out. And suddenly everyone's talking about DreamWorks. And now DreamWorks is one of the biggest studios out there. and they are doing some of the most amazing animation out there. There was a time where no one knew their name. If all of the animators had gone, no, I'm not going to work at that little tiny studio, I'm going to work at this big one, everyone would have missed out. The people who went there, yeah, Fortiche, small studio. No one knew Studio Fortiche. And then they released Arcane. No one knew about Pixar. Pixar was just a rendering company before. They did VFX stuff. And now they're working on all of these amazing things. DNEG, the studio DNEG. It was a VFX studio. They did VFX for films and stuff. They're going to be they worked on Nimona that's coming out, which is a big show that's going to be coming out soon. And the animation there is apparently going to be mind-blowing. Sony Animation. Before Lego Movie and all of those, who talked about Sony Animation? No, it was Disney, DreamWorks, and Pixar. Sony? Blah, who wants to work at Sony? And now they're doing Spider-Verse. So, you never know what studios are going to make it big. What studios are going to be game-changing. By focusing only on the brand name, you are actually going to miss out on so many opportunities. Do not be afraid of the small studios. I have a friend, for example, who worked at a tiny studio. Tiny little studio. They had one animator, which was my friend. He was the only animator on the whole team. That shows you how small it is. And they started off just making tiny little games. Until they made Pathless for the PlayStation 5. And it was one of the launch titles for the PlayStation 5. My friend was the sole animator for like a huge chunk of that whole game until they finally hired, I believe it was 2 other animators on there to help him out. And he worked on a launch title for the PlayStation, and now that studio is making another huge game after that. If he had gone, I'm going to be the one animator at that studio, that's not good enough. I need to work at a big studio. He would have missed out on a huge opportunity. So, to kind of like tie this together, when you are graduating, it can be tempting to want to work at these big studios. It can be tempting because you want to work on something big. You want to work on something game-changing and noteworthy, something that will be remembered by people. But really, think about the games and the movies that are remembered by us. They're not always the big ones. And this kind of goes into the next question here. So, what's the point of making a masterpiece if no one sees it? So this is actually goes to animate or working on something, let's say from Europe. Europe does amazing cartoons, but who's going to see it? People don't watch European cartoons like they watch Pixar or Disney films. The whole world watches Disney or Pixar. Not many people will watch these art house films or these smaller like French studios, for example. So we've got that. Let's come back to that in just a second. So what's the point of making a masterpiece if nobody sees it? Keep that in mind. We're returning to that. But let's keep going. So the next question they ask is, they saw a term that fits a lot of the media that we see, disposable media. And it's true. We work in a society where people will watch one thing and then never watch it again. It's very disposable. They mentioned that they don't want to spend their whole life working on content that's cast aside when there are amazing things going on, amazing projects that will be remembered. They want to be part of something that gets remembered and cherished, something that has the impact like the 60s Star Trek, which is still like much beloved today and resonates with people. So let's kind of address these notes: disposable media and the lasting effect of things. So first off, disposable media. As animators, we have to be comfortable with the fact that our animations are disposable. And what I mean by disposable is that most people, aside from other animators, don't watch movies multiple times. Like, really think about it. We, as animators, we've watched Toy Story countless times. We've watched Jurassic Park and Star Wars, and like, that's the world we love and we live in. We watch these things and we'll rewatch them quite often. But for the general population, how often do they watch a film? How often do they rewatch a film? Most people will watch a film once, and that's it. And your shot, which is part of that film that they'll only watch once, is maybe 100 frames out of an hour and a half that they are going to see once and then never again. And that's going to be most of your work ever. And it kind of sucks a little bit when you think about it that way, that we're putting all of this effort for something that's going to be on screen for 2 seconds and it'll go away. But even with disposable media, that just watching something and letting it drift off, just because it's disposable doesn't mean it's not memorable. Does it mean that it doesn't leave an impact? No. Just think of like the YouTube videos you've watched. Think of the movies you've seen. There's certain movies you've probably only watched once, but it still sticks with you a little bit. You still remember it. You still have good memories of it. Is that a bad thing? No. And it's one of those things where we as animators, as much as it is nice when you work on something that changes someone's life, something like The Lion King, when it came out and it was just this mind-blowing, amazing piece of animation that just becomes legendary. There is a part of animation that is more personal. And at least to me, this is the thing that I like to focus on animation, is it's not always about the big project that you're going to work on. It's about those moments. How can you make someone feel, even if it's just for a moment? That to me is a victory. If I can make someone laugh, if I can make someone think or cry, even if they don't remember my work, if that they don't remember that one moment, that one shot that I did, if I helped to make them see the world a little differently, or I helped bring joy into their world just for a moment, isn't that good? Like, isn't that nice? It's the same thing of like, think about going your day-to-day life. For me personally, I'm never going to be famous. I do not see myself ever becoming a Chris Pratt. I share the last name, but I'm not going to be that famous. I'm never going to be going down the streets and everyone's going to recognize me and I'm going to bring joy to the masses just by walking amongst them. Not going to happen. Does that mean that what I do is unimportant? If I go shopping and I smile at someone and just say, I wish them a good day, or just be pleasant with people, and then they might be having a bad day and they smile back. Well, I help add a little bit of joy, even if it's just a tiny bit, into their lives. Is that a bad thing? Should I just quit because, well, it's not good enough? I'm not making hundreds of people happy. I'm just making one person happy. No. It's one of those things where you don't know the impact that your one little thing will have on people. Something that feels disposable to you, something that feels like it's just this job that you hated and then you're throwing it away and whatever, move on. Might be that one piece of media that some kid watches that just sticks with them, that they just loved and it brought them joy. And we never know what that's going to be, because I'm sure, like many of you, if you're like me in some way, you might have had a toy or you played a video game, or you watched a cartoon that was absolutely garbage. It was just terrible. There was nothing good about it. It was like, you look back on it now, it's like, oh man, I watched this. The animation was awful. Or like the video game, it's barely playable. And yet at the time when you were young, it was the greatest thing that you had. A good example for me, for example, is Superman 64. If any of you have ever heard about this, it's probably way before most of your times. Superman 64 is notoriously one of the worst Nintendo 64 games ever. It was garbage. It was awful. No one likes that game. Cameron and I used to rent it from a video store, and we'd play it on weekends. And we loved it. We had so much fun playing that game. We just enjoyed playing. We weren't trying to finish the game. We weren't trying to beat the game. We weren't trying to like finish the story. We just loved playing. We just loved flying around. We wouldn't even do the missions. We would just fly around and shoot lasers out of Superman's eyes and blow with the ice breath and just have fun. And there was a multiplayer in there, and we would just play together. That game, which is arguably the worst Nintendo 64 game, brought us joy. Those animators who were working on this and probably hating every moment of it, maybe not, maybe it was a good team that they were working with. They brought us joy. And I will remember that for the rest of my life, hopefully, unless I start forgetting things, which with my mind, not quite as unlikely as it seems. But you never know that impact that you're going to have. And to say that it's not worth it, at least to me, like, everyone is different. You don't have to put that worth in for yourself. But for me, when I'm working on media, even though I might think it's not the greatest thing, I'm going to put the utmost work into it because it could make someone's day happy. It could make them just enjoy that day a little bit more. So, even with the most disposable of media, you can make someone's day a little bit brighter. Now, with that, going on to the next element of wanting to be remembered and cherished for something big and huge and like just this cultural icon, like the 60s Star Trek. Once again, that falls into, just like the studios, you never know what's going to be big. You never know. You could be working on, let's say, the greatest Disney film, Raya and the Last Dragon. Yay, it's coming out. I'm going to be working on a Disney film. And it came out and everyone went, meh. Okay. There wasn't much to it in terms of like fanfare, and it didn't stick, not like Frozen or Tangled or something like that. But then, for example, we're going into video games now, but there's this one little video game that came out and it was made by some random guy. Something called Undertale came out a few years ago. Became the biggest game ever. Just this absolute powerhouse that is going to be remembered as one of the greatest games of all time. And no one had heard anything about it up to that point. Just like a studio, how you never know which studio is going to make it big. You never know what project is going to actually be hated or loved by people. So when you're working on something, again, whether it's a big studio or not, you could be working on something that is going to be the most beloved thing ever. So you want to keep an eye out for it. Now, that's not to say like every little studio has the potential of being the next big great thing. No, if you're working at a studio and they're just making like garbage shovelware, yeah, odds are they're now going to be changing their tune on the next project and making the next unbelievable masterpiece. But small studios are not the end of a career. Sometimes they are the leading into something even bigger than you'd ever thought possible. And you just look at so many of these indie games. Undertale, there's Night in the Woods. What else? There's another big one that came out recently. Blanking out on it now. But like, there's all of these games that were made by small studios, and people love them. I got it. It was Among Us. Who heard of the studio that made Among Us before Among Us came out? Stray, Hollow Knight. Yeah, exactly. All of those. You look at the studio names, and it's not like Nintendo. It's not Sony. It's not Rockstar Games. Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, those games have made a cultural impact. Minecraft. Like, they're such a cultural impact that is unreachable by most games. And they came out of nowhere. So, I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it's very important as you're like diving into this animation industry. It's going to be hard to get that big name job. It really is. And if that's your goal, that is a good goal to have. Do not drop that goal. Live up to that goal and work for it. But as you go and work towards that goal, don't let that goal blind you to every other amazing possibility along the way. Because if you do, and I've seen it happen, where people just get focused on, I'm just going to work at a big studio, nothing else, nothing else, nothing else, and they ignore all these potential things. Ignore all these small studios. And you lose out on potential. So when you're going through, pay attention. When a small studio comes up and you're looking for a job, do some research on them. See what kind of company they are. You might be surprised by what you find. And kind of answering the kind of what you were mentioning in the question before here, like something that makes an impact with people, like the 60s Star Trek. Well, 60s Star Trek was the same thing. We look at it now as this cultural phenomenon that was absolutely beautiful and amazing. And wow, look at that. It's fantastic. When it came out, no one cared about it. The 60s Star Trek was made by Desilu Pictures, which was the same people who did I Love Lucy. The only reason it got onto the air was because Lucy from I Love Lucy basically forced the studio to do it because she liked the idea. If it was up to the executives, they would have just scrapped it all. They were given so little budget because no one believed in them that all of their costumes, they didn't have enough money to make the costumes the correct way with the unions. So they had to make the costumes in some small little costume place outside and then sneak it in through the window into the studio and basically go, oh, look, we found these costumes that were just in the studio. I guess we're going to use these. No one believed in them. Not only that, it was supposed to go for 5 seasons. They got canceled after 3 because even after they became popular, the executives didn't believe in them. And only afterwards did suddenly it become this beloved franchise. If you were an animator at that time, let's say trying to find a job, and you see this small studio, Desilu Pictures, they're working on Star Trek. You know, what's that? No one's heard of that at the time. It would have been very easy to go, I'm not going to work on that. I'm going to work on Pixar. Let's say Pixar was around at that time. And you would have missed out on this amazing opportunity. So, once again, do not discredit small studios. Do not discredit small projects, because those are where you get those gems. If you think of the biggest gems, a lot of them came from the nobodies. So, as you're going through your career, I know I've mentioned it again, but I'm going to mention it as many times as it takes. Have a dream. It is good to have a dream. For example, you could want to work on the next Star Wars film. They just announced the new Ahsoka, I forget how to pronounce her name, series for Disney Plus. There's The Mandalorian. There's potentially a new Kenobi series coming out, a new season for that. There's like so many things. Star Wars. I grew up with Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Like, this is my game section here. I've got a Star Wars section in my house. I've got lightsabers. I love Star Wars. If I could work on a Star Wars project, that would be a dream come true. But in the meantime, as I work my way to that dream, I'm going to enjoy the steps along the way. And this kind of goes into the last bit of your question here is, I suppose my greatest fear is ending up like some of my coworkers at my part-time job I have. Old men full of regrets, misery, and bitterness. Some of them are content, but with some of them, I feel this vibe of I've never done anything with my life or career. I'm stuck and I'm angry with myself. We want to avoid that. We want to avoid that journey along the way and only looking back and seeing it with regret. That is very true. That is a horrible fate for anyone to have. But at least to me, the biggest thing is don't let your life be filled with regret. An example is my journey in animation. When I started Animation Mentor, I wanted to be the greatest animator I could be. Not the best, because I knew I was never going to be the best, but I just wanted to be working on something great. Just like what we were talking about here. I wanted to work at Disney or DreamWorks or Pixar. I wanted to work on the next Wreck-It Ralph movie. That's what came out when I was a student. I wanted to work on the next Zootopia. I wanted to work on these big projects. I wanted to work on big video games, Zelda, Mario, something like that. That was my dream. I went through Animation Mentor. I graduated. And life kicked me in the face. And essentially, because of things that were happening with my family and like health and all of that, I couldn't leave and I had to stay home. I couldn't go and move. There was no remote jobs back then. I couldn't move to California. I couldn't move to Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal to look for jobs. I'm in Manitoba, Canada. The one place in Canada that has no studios at all. We had one studio and I think they closed down. Nothing. And for a long time, that was going to be my career. It was just nothing. There's no way of advancing it. And right there and then I could have gone, well, time to live in misery and regret and go, well, what wasted opportunity my life was. Instead, I changed my dream. I might not become the greatest animator that I could possibly be. I might not work on the greatest film that I possibly could. But what I could do is I could help someone else get there. I could help teach at Animation Mentor. I could help create material for students. Eventually I could start a Twitch stream that I could help people with. So that even though I couldn't achieve that dream of working on the biggest film that I could possibly have, I could get someone else there. And like to this day, I haven't worked on a major film. I haven't worked on a major video game, like not like Disney, like Zootopia or like Spider-Man or something like that. But would I say that my life is full of regret and that I'm going to be miserable and bitter? No. Even though I didn't achieve, I've still got some time to go, so maybe it'll happen. But let's say this is the end of my career. Maybe tomorrow I retire. I've got the gray hair for it. Like, we're just going to go there. Tomorrow all the wrinkles set in, the hair goes full white, and it's time to retire. Would I say that my career was miserable and regretful? I do regret not being able to do the thing that I wanted to. But I don't regret what I did. I enjoy what I did. I had fun teaching and I had fun helping other people get into the industry. I had fun getting to see their names in the movies. Every time I watch a movie now, I would say like 90% of the time I see someone I recognize in the end credits. unless I'm watching like a foreign film, and even then I'll recognize some names. So I see so many people that I know who are living their dream, and that makes me happy. That is worth it to me, because even if I just did a little thing, maybe just a little bit, I helped them along that journey. And they might not even remember me. Maybe they'll go on and forget about me completely. That's okay. Some people will remember, some won't, but that's fine. I helped them, and I got to have them do something that they love. And not only that, someone else loved what they did too. And that is just awesome to me. That is like, what a great thing to just help in some small way with that. So when you're working on your project, as you're working on your career, as you're working on getting into the animation industry, it is good to have a dream. It is amazing to have a dream. Live that dream. Work for that dream. But sometimes the dreams don't come true. It's a sad truth. Sometimes life happens and you're not going to be able to live that dream. But it doesn't stop you from changing it and living a new dream that you never thought possible. I never thought I was going to be a teacher. Me, a teacher? Pfft, as if. I would never have thought of it. But now I enjoy it so much. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy getting to talk with students and helping them and seeing them grow. Like getting to see a student learn how to do a bouncing ball and fail at it spectacularly. And then see them like a year and a half later and they're doing a 2-character dialogue shot and it's amazing and breathtaking. Like, that's amazing. It's magic seeing that talent just come out of them and show themselves to the world like that. I would never have done that if I didn't run into the obstacles that I did. Exactly. Don't let your dreams dictate your happiness. Exactly. The dreams are there to be worked towards, but not to be a shackle, not to hold you back and make you feel like you've failed. You can have multiple dreams. If your dream, for example, going back to these questions, is your dream is to work on a masterpiece, to make something that people remember, to make something that people will enjoy. Well, first, how much do you really need? Like, do you need the world to remember your name, to have it written in the stars, essentially? And every time people look up into the sky, it's like, yeah, people will remember me. Or is it okay for one person, one kid, to remember something you worked on and just love it? And love it so much that it inspired them to do something. For me, at least, if I can make one person happy, that's all I'd want. To make one kid play a video game that just made their day and left them with something that made them a better person in some small way. So in terms of like working towards a masterpiece, my biggest advice would be, a masterpiece doesn't have to be world renowned. A masterpiece can be personal to people. And if you really want to work towards that masterpiece, just keep your eyes open for all sorts of opportunities. Keep your eyes open to different prospects. And once again, be open to change. Because your dream could be to work at a big studio. But if you see a small studio that's working on this one cool little project, sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth the risk. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're going to work on a project where it didn't turn out, which is what happened to me just recently. So some of you might remember, like I was mentioning, like, hey, I got a job at a studio and I'm going to be helping to set up a studio and help out with that. And then you notice I haven't talked about it since. Because essentially everything went wrong and the management just crumbled, and essentially Cameron and I were working on projects and no one got back to us, and suddenly everything just kind of disappeared, and it just, nothing happened. And we weren't even like let go. It just kind of gone. And that happens. We could have gone, well, that's our opportunity gone. That was our one chance to become like leads, and we were going to help build a studio. All of our opportunities wasted. Time to live in regrets and misery. It was a learning experience, and now we're going to keep going with it. It didn't stop me from still teaching. It didn't stop me from still enjoying animation. Because at the end of the day, that's why I do animation, is because I love animation. Not for the gold and the glory and the names and the highlights and the stars and all of that stuff. I animate because I love animating. And if I can, again, make someone's day happy, that makes me happy. Now, I'm not saying that has to be your dream and everyone should just be that way. No. But again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's very important. Don't let those dreams and that magnitude of, I want to be up here, stop you from enjoying every step of the way up to that point. And even if you stop here, that's still pretty good. Like, think about it this way. If you're climbing Everest, that's a pretty big achievement already. You're climbing the tallest mountain in the world. And your goal is to make it to the top. But what happens if you only make it halfway? Does that mean that you failed and you should live your life in misery? You never got to see the top of Everest? Well, it's very sad. It is very sad. Like, you worked so hard to get to the top of Everest and you couldn't make it. But wasn't it a beautiful view all the way along? Didn't you enjoy the journey to the mountain? Wasn't an adventure to do it with your friends and like climb halfway up? Sure, it's disappointing you didn't make it to the end, but it doesn't mean the journey wasn't as fun. Exactly, a silver medal is still a medal. And being able to say that you ran a race, like even if you don't even place, it hurts because you're working so hard to do that. But to say, for example, that you were in the Olympics, you didn't get the gold, you didn't get the silver, you didn't even get the bronze. You were at the Olympics. That is huge. You went up against the best athletes in the world. And you were there. That's pretty darn awesome. So, I don't know how helpful this talk is to people. I don't know, because everyone's different. Everyone has different dreams and goals. But trying to enjoy the journey and enjoy the, how do I want to phrase this? Enjoy the process. It's one of those things where animation is fun. And at least for me, I've met some of the absolute best people ever being an animator. I've made lifelong friends in this career. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Even if this is the furthest I get in my animation career. I've worked on some basic freelance things. I almost started a studio and helped there, and then it disappeared and just gone into smoke. That's the furthest my animation career went. I'd be happy. I still made friends who I will cherish dearly right up until the end. I've had experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything. And I've got to help people along the way, which, like, what better thing is there than that, at least to me? Yeah. So that's the answer that I have. I hope it's helpful. I hope it makes sense. I hope I wasn't too repetitive. I know I repeated quite a bit throughout all of that. But it would have been funny if the music that was playing was like yakety sax or something like that. The whole time I wasn't even paying attention to the music. It would have been, if I rewatch this recording later and it's just like the most goofy music, that would be the best. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's any other elements to this. that I want to go over. And yeah, I know I kind of addressed this in parts, but like there is the question, what's the point of making a masterpiece if nobody's going to see it? Again, I mentioned this earlier, but you never know who's going to watch it, and you never know who's going to enjoy it to their utmost content. So, for example, I grew up with French cartoons. I'm French Canadian. I grew up with a French library of films and TV shows. How many here remember Ernest le Vampire, Ernest the Vampire? Anyone? I've asked this question and I think I've only ever heard of, hey, there you go. You're the second person who's ever heard of that cartoon. Ernest le Vampire or Ernest the Vampire. Wow, look at that. I've literally tripled the amount of people who have heard of that cartoon in this one Q&A. That's awesome. So for anyone who might not remember the name, it was a vampire. He had 2 huge fangs and he was really cute and adorable. Hey, another one. Jeez, I've asked this question in multiple classes that I've taught and no one has ever heard about it. And now I've got 4 people right in here. Or 3 people and then the one other person I've ever heard about it. So we've got 3 people here out of 54 people in this Q&A. Oh, you did look at that cartoon? Yes. So we've got 4. So 4 out of 54 people watched that. Tiny little odds, not even 10%. When I watched that, I loved that cartoon. I absolutely adored that cartoon. It touched, like it made me want to become an animator. I just enjoyed it so much. It was so funny to me when I was growing up. I was very young when I watched it. So there was Ernest le Vampire. There was T-Spot, which was a little dog, Little Spot. There were so many of those old cartoons that meant the world to me, that no one else had ever seen, really. Once again, does that make it not worth it? What's the point of making a masterpiece if nobody is going to see it? Someone's going to see it, and someone's going to be touched and is going to love it. Another good example of that for me is, so it was Ernest, there was T-Spot, Watatatao. How many people remember that one? That's going to be that because this is French specifically, French Canadian, I should say. No, it was just a TV show on French Canadian television called Watatatao, and it was just this like weird like variety show, I guess you could call it. It was just like they'd have little cartoons and whatnot in there. Cameron and I loved that show because they'd show cartoons and everything. Again, no one remembers that. I've never met anyone else who remembers that, and I loved it. It meant so much to me, and if I got to meet the people who worked on that, I would just be so grateful to them. Samedi quelque chose. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what other shows that I watched growing up that were just so influential to me. But either way, like, looking at modern films, let's say, how many people here have watched Wakfu or Dofus? Or Ernest et Celestine? How many people have seen those? And please, thank you so much for the gift. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, the Ernest et Celestine, Wakfu, Dofus, those are shows more recently that came out that I absolutely adored. But again, not many people have seen it because it's French. Now, Dofus and Wakfu are starting to become more popular because they're on Netflix now. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. But Ernest et Celestine, not many people have still seen it yet. And now there's a sequel coming out, which I'm really excited for. I used to play the Dofus game too. And I also played a little bit of the Wakfu game when it first came out. I loved Dofus. It was a lot of fun. I always played the Iliatrop, the elf, the archer. And Cameron played was it the Iliatrop? Cameron played the one with the sword and the fiery hair. What was his name? Forget. But yeah, either way, you never know what people are going to love, and aiming for the masterpiece that everyone around the world, E-Up, that's it. Yeah, the E-Up. That's what Cameron used to play. Yeah, just focusing entirely on just the one thing that everyone is going to love. Unfortunately, more often than not, you're going to be disappointed because we live in a world where everyone hates everything. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you could have the best movie ever. Star Wars, let's say. I love Star Wars. Star Wars is one of the best films ever made. The first 3, beautiful. I know someone personally who hates Star Wars. Everything Star Wars. He thinks the first 3 films are garbage because they're just like space wizards in space and it's stupid and there's a walking carpet and like, what the heck? It's stupid. He hates it. Absolutely hates it. You're never going to please everyone. And that's okay. Everyone has a different taste. They like movies that I don't like. I like movies that other people don't like. Everyone has different tastes. So I try to avoid the idea of working on something that everyone is going to love and focus more on, did I enjoy working on it? Did I have a good time with the crew that I worked on? And am I going to remember those amazing times that I had with them? Because at the end of the day, that to me is going to be so much more worth it. And if, again, someone somewhere loves the show that I did, even in some small way, well, that's even better. Let's see. I got the current job through one of the most awful gigs I've done. Sometimes the shitty jobs are your ticket too. Whatever you want your ticket to be. Exactly. So, yeah. I'm going to stop here because at this point, I'll just keep ranting on forever. Like, how long has it been? Like 40 minutes just ranting on about this. I hope it made sense. I hope it was helpful. Again, the big thing, just to summarize, is enjoy the journey. And you're going to work hard. I'm not going to debate that. Animation is mind-blowingly hard. It is just a pain at times. But it is one of those journeys that I wouldn't trade. It's been so much fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, at least for me.